Article 9, dealing with, whenever possible, transactions be in writing. And again, the statute of frauds, many states require that real estate contracts to be enforceable, although there are exceptions, to be enforceable, that they be in writing. And Article 9 says whenever possible, we should put real estate contracts and negotiations in writing.
Realtors, for the protection of all parties, shall assure, whenever possible, that agreements shall be in writing and shall be in clear and understandable language expressing the specific terms, conditions, obligations, and commitments of the parties. A copy of each agreement shall be furnished to each party upon their signing or initialing. Now, we're talking about the Code of Ethics, we're talking about agency, but it's interesting to see how other bodies of law come into play, namely the law of contracts. And what Article 9 tells me is if a real estate agent is going to be helping their parties to draft and write certain provisions in the contract, that they need to make sure that those provisions exactly express the specific terms and conditions of the parties, because if they don't, and that client loses out in the transaction, they're going to refer back to Article 9.
You know, the other day when we were going over this material together, John, as we read Article 9, I mean, it is specifically to us contract law. I mean, it's just very, very clear contract necessities. I like to read it again because I think it's very important. Realtors, for the protection of all parties, shall assure, whenever possible, that agreements shall be in writing and shall be in clear and understandable language, expressing the specific terms, conditions, obligations, and commitments of the parties. A copy of each agreement shall be furnished to each party upon their signing or initialing. And again, now you could pull that almost out of a license law book when we're talking about contracts. And now it's here where in the Code of Ethics specifically stated as an article in the National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics.
Now, most realtors, when they're working with contracts, are working with standard forms, approved forms, generally have been gone over by either a bar association in conjunction with a realtor association. But I think where Article 9 needs to, where you need to pay attention to that is when you go beyond the standard form language itself and you start adding provisions.
When you start to draft your own language in a contract, which there is some room for, because there are blanks there, but you have to be very careful about what you put in those blanks. And whatever you put into those blanks, they need to be definite and specific in every detail.
Now, sometimes the buyer might say, you know, why don't you just put in a provision that enables me to get an option on the neighboring parcel, and just you don't have to go to a lawyer and get all that legal language. Just put something simple that everybody understands. Well, that to me is always a red flag, because whatever language you put in there, even if the buyer tells you the language to put in there, it may not meet the requirements of Article 9. It may actually even be the practicing of law. So you need to be very careful how you go to drafting that kind of special language.